Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
Honored to serve with you too, Representative Ortiz.
When the anniversary of 6 January attacks on the nationalist capital was upon us, there was a section of my oath in military service that I couldn't get out of my head. Against all enemies, foreign and domestic. But in the shadow of honoring the memory of Dr. King this past weekend, there's another quote that as a combat veteran remains the most inspiring yet most elusive. And that is, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. It is far too easy to allow fear to fuel anger, frustration, and hate. I and countless generations of soldiers and veterans may have depended on one or more of these to get them through the ugly, destructive reality of combat and war. And although using fear may get you results, and we have no further to look than the big lie, which culminated in the attacks of 6 January, which is now culminating in laws across the country suppressing the vote. I want to speak of love and compassion because, naive though it may sound, I trust that Dr. King more than knew what he was talking about. To be clear, focusing on love and compassion does not mean we shy away from the truth, nor does it mean we back off from protecting the right to vote and the push to make voting as accessible as possible. The past 10 years of my life have been some of the most difficult that I have known, not only because of the personal journey of almost having lost my own life, coming home forever changed, having to rebuild and relearn how to live life with a disability, but also because of the sacrifices that my brothers and sisters in arms made, some sacrificing their very lives, leaving friends and family behind that come from all political stripes. I think it's no secret that I found the election of Donald Trump personally disconcerting. I mean, as a candidate, he characterized those coming here for a better life as not sending their best, as rapists, and as murderers. How was I to feel being first-generation American on my mother's side, her family being from Jalisco, Mexico? But the oath to the Constitution for me didn't fade just because it wasn't what I personally wanted. And unlike some chants coming from the other side, he was my president, duly elected by the people of the United States. The mission for me then didn't become about making it harder for those that I disagreed with to vote, nor was it about supporting a lie to rationalize making the ballot less accessible for people that I disagree with. The mission became about working together, speaking to my values of service, of integrity of policies that I believed in to motivate all eligible voters that our democracy works best when everyone makes their voices heard, whether I agreed with them or not. There are many Americans that realized how critical participation was after 2016, and participate they did. 2020 saw some of the highest voter turnouts on both sides in election history. And rather than accept the results of a proven, secure, safe, and fair election, the security of which has been proven over and over again by recounts pushed by those that believed the big lie and paid for by taxpayers, the security of which has been proven by the courts, by judges that were appointed by both Democrats and Republicans, even appointed by Trump himself, we witnessed an all too familiar tactic used by authoritarians of the past and present: the undermining of facts and truth, the undermining of institutions that have been established to safeguard the truth, and the very values of our democracy. We saw Trump and some of his ilk put their own desire for power above the very foundations that our nation was founded upon. I mean, we had a general and a founding father in George Washington that was so wildly popular after defeating one of the most powerful militaries of the time that he could have seized power and become a king himself, were he a lesser man. He could have placed personal wealth and power above the amazing idea of this crazy experiment he helped form. A founding father and general in George Washington whose actions and integrity overshadows a modern disgraced retired general in Flynn who posed the idea of using martial law to seize power for Trump. No, instead of seizing power like a king or taking a third term, Washington wanted to live in peace, spend time with his family, and grow crops. Something that I personally relate to more and more. Brothers and sisters, I am tired of the violence, actual violence and political violence. What hurts the most is coming home to a country so divided that we treat each other like vilified enemies. But that is precisely part of the reason why I feel called to this type of service in elected office, especially in the light of the fact that vet brothers and sisters were there on 6 January, They're trying to overturn an election and prevent the peaceful transfer of power they swore an oath to protect. But I need my peers in here, in this chamber, to understand a little bit of why this might have happened and why it didn't surprise me, though it deeply pained me. After 20 plus years of combat, multiple combat deployments, broken families, injured minds, and broken bodies, empty chairs at unit reunions, at family Thanksgiving and Christmases, I'm not surprised some of us, still trying to make sense of our service and sacrifice, turn to this. Some having a hard time transitioning from service, dealing with the pain of trying to understand why, can make easy and fertile ground for radicalization and influence, especially by elected leaders that purport to wrap themselves in the flag and in patriotism. How can you claim to be a patriot when you use your dad's wealth and influence to get a diagnosis of burn spores to avoid a draft? That's why I say purport. We can be easily swayed by leaders that would use those ideals we love and promise to defend, to create a new mission against a new enemy. Our words and our actions as elected leaders matter more than you can know, and I beg you to take that to heart. Trump and his ilk that put power above dedication to truth and put power above our critical democratic institutions tapped into something viscerally real, and I beg those of you on both sides, don't lose sight of that during a time when we might first say to ourselves, against all enemies, foreign and domestic, instead of maybe first saying, hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. To my veteran brothers and sisters that may have been fooled or still may believe and support the big lie, I can't help but think of some of the lessons I learned during SEER School, which stands for Survival, Evasion, Torture, Resistance, and Escape Training. The values of coming home with honor and keeping the faith with each other, never giving up on each other despite mistakes that might be made in possibly supporting the enemy. It's not the average American citizen or brother, sister, veteran trying their best to make sense of it all that is the enemy, but rather those that have inspired the worst in them and in all of us, that placed fear and the desire for power above the very values that this country was founded on, making a mockery of the very example set by one of the greatest founding fathers in George Washington, who put integrity and loyalty to this great democracy ahead of power. Voting is the keystone that holds up this fragile structure, ladies and gentlemen. And for that and many reasons, I urge an aye vote on this resolution.
Thank you, Representative Ortiz. Representative